My guest today is a global self-love and relationship coach. She empowers women to reclaim the source of their light, their feminine essence and intuition. In societies where women are taught to be more like men, her guidance helps women overcome this false conditioning so they can heal from the trauma it's created, reconnecting with their emotional bodies and living authentically from their hearts. My guest has qualifications in psychology and a master's degree in social and political science. She's a certified master practitioner in hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming, and timeline therapy. Her expertise extends to postgraduate training in rebirthing breathwork, Iridology, Sclerology, health, and wellness. Outside of work, my guest thrives on adventure and meaningful connections, whether she's traveling through her birth city of Paris, skydiving through the clouds, or simply sharing heartfelt conversations on the couch with friends. She truly embraces life in all its richness, teaching others to live their lives fully and from the heart. She's the founder of the Yalini Experience and host at Lead from Love podcast. She is also one of the coolest chicks I have ever met. With so many synchronicities between us, having this conversation with today's guest gave me a renewed hope that there is a woman out there helping other women find meaningful relationships and guiding them to live a life of love and abundance in a way only a woman knows how. Enjoy the episode, guys. Hello, listeners. Thanks for joining another episode of the Skin I'm In podcast. I'm your host, Chanel, and this is a place where women can tune in to gain peace through clarity, purpose through inspiration, and the permission to be themselves through the stories of other women. If you're enjoying these episodes so far, click the like, share, and subscribe button so that more women like you can be positively impacted by the stories in this podcast. Welcome to the Skin I'm In podcast, Yali. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for having me on, Chanel.
I just feel like we've spoken so many times because for the listeners, we've had a few tech issues. We are now on the third time we're trying this conversation. But I feel like I know Yali, like she's been my girlfriend for years. So let's talk about what you do. You are a self-love and relationship coach. You empower women to reclaim the source of their light, their feminine essence, and their intuition. Why is this work so important to you?
This work is important, not just for me, but I think a lot of women out there in this generation who are feeling jaded by the story that they were told, right? Because a lot of us are either part of the outcome of the feminist movement that said we can have it all, and we've done it, we've gotten a successful career, we have that full life, we've got our friends, but we're alone and wondering whether all the good men are at. Or we're sitting there on Tinder or Hinge or whatever app you're on, and you're sold the illusion that there's plenty of fish in the sea, but you just can't seem to find it. And women are increasingly feeling like, I did all the right things. I worked so hard to be a catch. Why can't I find a man? And so the biggest part of my job is helping them understand what's really going on, that there's nothing wrong with them, but we're doing some things that are a little bit different that aren't working for us. And the things that we thought were making us a catch are actually standing in the way of us finding real, authentic love.
Yeah, and we've talked a couple of times now about what that actually means for women. And one of the things that I'd love for you to elaborate for the listeners on is, that piece about how we work so hard to become this catch, and it actually is the exact thing that stands in the way of us finding true love, true connection. Can you explain to the listeners what that means, and is there really that much unraveling that we need to do to be able to find the person who's right for us?
Oh my gosh. The unraveling, it goes back so far. So the conditioning that we've been living on is that we need to be independent. We need to have our own career and be successful, which I'm not saying is bad. It's amazing. It's the reason you and I, even on this podcast, right? We have our own businesses. But it's the idea that we should be able to do everything on our own. And there's two elements at play here. One is the feminist movement. that told us we don't need a man. I don't need a man. I am fine on my own. And the second is based on all of the things that has bombarded our senses since we were little, from our family and through the media, that told us all the things that we need to do to be lovable, to be worthy, to be someone worth loving. And so our identity and our worth got tied up in all of the things that we could accomplish and do. So as long as we were the good girl, as long as we did as we were told, as long as we tidied up and we cleaned and we cooked and we got the house sorted and we looked after the kids and we were completely giving of everything of ourselves, then we could be worth something. Then we could be lovable. And then on top of that, you've got the media that pits women against each other and says, you need to look a particular way. You need to do your hair a particular way. You need to have your lips look full a particular way. You need to have your breasts like this. And by the way, that's constantly changing. I mean, how many times have something as simple that you would have thought is just the way it is, like your eyebrows? How many times has that changed, right?
My eyebrow refuses to leave the Mariah Carey era. If I try to grow my eyebrows out, it grows on my eyelid, not where my eyebrow is.
You're like, I can't do anything about this now, because we've changed and contoured it so many times over the years based on what we were told we needed to look like. And here's the thing, the biggest thing to undo, and it doesn't happen overnight because this has happened for your entire life and for generations, is to realize that this is a story that we were sold. And we were sold this story because someone can make money off of it. If we are constantly told that we need to change something about ourselves in order to be worthy, in order to be lovable, that can be commodified. So we can pay to go to the gym, to change the way that our bodies look. We can buy corsets to get that super slim figure and those accentuated hips. We can pay for surgery to get that Brazilian butt. We can get Botox. We can get lipo. Someone is constantly making money, and that is the biggest lie. So coming back to the truth that we are inherently worthy, for women, that is one of the hardest things to believe. And this is the way that I like to describe it. When you came into this world as a screaming baby that refused to sleep, that refused to be on anyone's schedule, that would poop your nappy, that needed to be changed how many times a day, irrespective of however much your parents were going crazy and sleep deprived, they showed up because you were lovable. Not because you smiled at them a certain number of times. You didn't have to fill a quota. Not because you looked super cute. Not because you hugged them. When you're a newborn, you don't even smile. That's not a reflex that you have for recognizing your parents. That comes months later. And yet they showed up because you were born inherently lovable, simply because you exist. Right? I'm pregnant right now, and this baby has given me, it has been one of the most challenging pregnancies. I tell you, I had hyperemesis gravidarum. I was on the couch for 4 months. I couldn't work. I couldn't leave the house. And yet I still love this baby. And it has done nothing to prove its lovability.
I love that you call that out, because even when you were talking, I was thinking to myself of my own childhood and my own, upbringing and the story I tell myself. I'm 40. I turned 40 last year. I was going to say this year. We're already 2025. What the? But I grew up in the era as an immigrant child, I moved to Sydney. I grew up on the northern beaches of Sydney, and I was the only one with hips and breasts in grade 5, right? I was starting to get shape.
Yeah.
However, back then, the Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawfords, Eva Evangelista, Kate Moss, the skinny from lower back to thigh, no bum look was in fashion. The I'm about to starve, but I'll have a cigarette and a glass of champagne look. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And now who would kill for your body?
But I still have body image things in my head, because I'm like, even though I was in what was it, like a D cup by the time I was in grade 7, I gave up athletics because boys used to make fun of me because, my boobs used to move when I used to run, and I was so embarrassed. I had so much shame around my body. And now everyone's trying to get the hips, the butt, the breasts. And I mean, my background's Armenian. We, as much as I do not like that family, the Kardashians are known for their curves, whether natural or not.
Contoured and
But
altered.
still, so even though my background, yes, we are naturally quite curvaceous in my culture, I still have issues with thinking of my body's not enough, and yet my body is actually in fashion now. And so when you said that thing about you become a commodity for these organizations, these businesses that are literally relying on you being insecure, we've talked about this before, the selling yourself online, the giving of your body too soon, the changing of your body to fit an ideal, like all of these things. I think that when women really absorb what everyone outside of them is trying to do in order to make money out of our insecurities, it really makes you wonder who you are, who you want to be, like how you see yourself in your life, and the decisions that you've made and the actions that you've taken to hold yourself back because someone somewhere along the line made you believe that you weren't enough, and then you've spent your life finding the evidence to prove that to yourself.
Oh, that is so powerful. I've got tingles listening to that, because the thing that strikes me the most with what you said is we've been sold a story. We're trying to aspire to it. And especially when it comes to selling our bodies, I really worry for a lot of women of today, because the things that we're putting online, that is permanent. That is permanent. And fortunately, you and I were born in a generation before the internet really existed the way that it does today, and before social media, and before mobile phones. So we have an identity outside of the internet. But for these younger women, it's, when we made mistakes, they weren't plastered all over the internet. But for these young women, as they're growing and maturing, there is now a trace that will never be deleted. And the reason that this strikes a chord with me is because where we're told we're claiming our power, so the power over our bodies, part of that is I can have sex like a man, right? I can go out there, and that is empowering. I can see it just for what it is, physical pleasure. I'm not emotional. I don't get attached, and I can use it and go from one guy to the next. And that is me in my power, and I can get paid for it. How fantastic is that? How liberating is that? But here's the thing. One, biologically, we are wired differently. And I can touch on that in a moment. So men and women biologically have a different response physically and emotionally to sex. And that impacts us in different ways. It's why men can have multiple partners and not be as affected as women. We cannot undo that just because we want to. Sex is also an energetic exchange. So we absorb each other's energies when we're intimate. But also, three, it's the idea that having sex is empowering and selling our bodies is empowering is the reverse of who we are as women. Because trying to be like a man, that was my greatest undoing and one of my biggest learnings moving through relationships and life and all of the traumas that I had growing up. Because I thought being like a man, that's empowering. Living in my head, that's amazing. I can control my emotions. I'm not subject to all of the vulnerabilities and all of the overwhelm that comes with my emotions. But then when you are using your body like a man, you have forgotten or do not know that as a woman, we hold the power just by simply holding the invitation. Because a man needs to be invited to have sex, and he is physically inside of your body. It's not the same. Men have an apparatus that, goes into whatever they want, but their personal physical body is not invaded. And for a woman, he is literally inside of you. And when we give that away to just anybody, it's sad because I feel like we don't realize the power that we hold. And the power isn't in acting like a man. The power is in being the full essence of a woman, the feminine energy, the magnetic power that she has, not just to be and to attract into her life, but to transform even a man. And that is beyond anything that you can just give away from person to person.
That's such an important comment to make. And as you were talking, I got really emotional because sometimes I find that the conversations that I have on this podcast reminds me of, who I was in my late teens, early 20s. And I remember I had a really promiscuous girlfriend who was very sexy. All the guys used to go for her and, they'd completely overlook me. And I would think to myself, what makes me different and what makes her different? And I've always been very conservative. We've talked about that whole good girl thing. For me, I think I had a mental breakdown at 32 or something, 31, I think it was when I first moved back from overseas. And I was just like, being a good girl's gotten me nowhere. And I had a night where I got so drunk, Yali, so drunk because I was just like, being me is getting me nowhere. But what I didn't realize and what I wish I knew sooner was that those who did not want me back then didn't actually deserve me. And yet I was desperate for their attention. They went after my girlfriend at the time. We have not been friends for a very long time because I found out once we stopped being friends, she went and hooked up with my first ever boyfriend. It was horrible, just to get back at me because quick story, because it kind of falls into here, right? She was dating this really great guy. We used to go to high school together. She was dating this really great guy that was a little bit older than her, or might have been about 17 at the time. But she was cheating on him with an absolute a-hole who, by the way, maybe just before I moved down to Melbourne, tried to hit on me when he saw me at a bar one night. And I thought, you're a creep. You've always been a creep. And I used to say to her, why do you go back to this guy? And her boyfriend, who was calling me, trying to organize her surprise birthday party for her 17th, was saying to me, where is she? She told me she was with you. And I couldn't lie. I'm like, he's actually a really nice guy. And she won't tell him. So I said, I'm sorry, but she's not with me. And he said, she's with him, isn't she? And I just died, right? And so when you were talking, I was just thinking of all these moments where I thought to myself, why is it that a girl like her would get the guys that I wish would pay attention to me? And now that I've gotten older, I've come to realize that they were never meant for me. They were never meant for me. They never deserved who I was. And I was looking in all the wrong places when I was dating because I just didn't understand. We talked about what success looks like for a woman. And I think I know I've talked about it a million times on this podcast, but for my family, success was you were thin, you were pretty, and you married well. And when I say you married well, he was tall, dark, handsome, and rich, so that you didn't have to work and you didn't have to, there was no investment in yourself required because you're the woman and you just take care of the house and you just make sure that you can keep a good man, And so I was getting emotional thinking about what you were saying because I was just like, thank God I've overcome all of those things and I've married the most wonderful man and he's kind and he's generous and he's not what I would have been looking for.
Yeah.
But now I know what it means to be supported, to be carried, and for a space to be created where I feel safe. These were not things I was taught as a woman to look for. And when I was on the dating scene, I had my checklist. Like you,
Love
I was
the
just like,
checklist.
I don't have time to go through all of this. And I used to probably come off really full on to a lot of guys that would have been probably really nice, but I didn't see it. And instead I attracted the ones that were complete narcissists and, had something else to gain out of being with someone like me who smart, funny, good to look at. And I can actually admit that these days. I used to never be able to admit that, mind you. Talk about the self-work. But, all the things that, like you, were like, I'm a catch. I don't understand why I can't find someone. So when you see the people that you see in your line of work, what are the things that you can tell them to help them get through this dating drama, chaos, crap? Thank God you and I are not out there, but
Oh my
I'm sorry to
gosh.
all the women who are. But I think
Oh.
that would change once your perspective changes. And that self-work piece for me is like the biggest thing. And I feel like it would be the same for you. So what would you tell women out there who are looking to get back out into the dating world, who are currently in the dating world, who are using the apps and thinking that being promiscuous is liberation? What would you tell them?
Oh gosh. I mean, first of all, I want to say, and because I hear this often, or don't hear it, but I see it play out often, you don't have to give him something in order for him to like you or to want you. And what I mean by that is you don't have to do anything to please him or to prove your worth. And often we go, maybe there was a guy that we liked and then it didn't work out. And you think, oh, but if only he knew this and this and this about me, he would have absolutely wanted me. I didn't get enough time to showcase all of who I am and all of that I have to offer. If he doesn't recognize your worth from the outset, he's not meant for you, because there is nothing you need to do to prove yourself. And that includes giving away access to your body. Now, the difference biologically between men and women, and I mean, I can touch on masculine and feminine energy as well, because we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. Some are just more than others. So there are actually some women that are more masculine and some men that are more feminine. But for the purposes of this, when I talk about a man and a woman, I'm talking about a masculine man and a feminine woman. So the way that we are wired is men hunt, they lead, and they value things that they have to work for. And women are all about receiving and nurturing and holding that loving space and being magnetic. There is just something about her. Oh, I can't get enough of that. And so when we are doing all of the pleasing, when we are trying to do all of the things for him to make his life better, and he's not putting in the effort, he is not going to value it as much. And here's the kicker, right? Sometimes we might catch ourselves in a moment of intense heat and passion and, we just want to go there. And you think, maybe I didn't want to do this on the first date. And maybe you say, I don't normally do this. And he's like, I'm not going to judge you for it. It's all like, hey, I'm so into you. In the back of his mind, what is going on that he will not admit to you is he's thinking, if she does this with me, she must sleep with everyone else as well.
No
And
matter what you say.
no matter what you say, no matter however
Yeah.
beautiful that connection was at the outset.
Yeah.
And so you are responsible for holding your value and your integrity. And as a man, he's proving to you that he's worthy, that he's worth your time. And we flipped it around somehow. When you're in the animal kingdom, it's often the male. It's like you look at birds, it's the male bird that looks more beautiful because he's got to do the work to get the interest of the female bird. But somehow, somewhere along the way in this society, we've inverted it, where women need to shape and contour and prep and prime themselves in a particular way to get his attention. And now we're chasing men. We're asking them out on dates. We're trying to pay. We're trying to show them our worth and our value and all of our characteristics. And do you know what a relief it is to know that you can just lean back and just go, okay, stop. I get to choose. I get to just be me. I don't have to do anything. I get to just show up as my authentic self. And he has to, if he wants me, he has to put in the work. Now, that doesn't mean you do nothing. That doesn't mean you play games or play hard to get. There are different layers to this, but it's about realizing that you don't have to do anything to prove yourself to another person. And as we talked about before, this isn't something that easily unravels overnight. You know, we have gone through a whole lifetime of trauma around believing that we're not inherently worthy. And that's not necessarily just our lifetime, this is generational. So we have been carrying this idea that we are not enough for so long. And a lot of the women that I see, they're successful, they're independent, they've got a full social life, they have friends, and they have one of two beliefs about themselves. One is, I'm amazing. I'm amazing. I don't need a man, and any man would be lucky to have me. And oh my gosh, I can really relate to that. That was definitely me once upon a time. And I don't need him, but I want him, and he's lucky to be in my life. And the other is someone typically that's gone through a lot of stuff when they were growing up. They haven't been in the dating game for long, or they come out from a long-term relationship, they've been single for a while, and they're scared. And they feel like, I don't know if anyone out there will love me. I don't know if I'm worthy of that. And both of these scenarios, as different as they seem, actually boil down to the same things, because they're two people still looking for love, but there is a reason they are not attracting it in their lives, or they're not able to hold on to it, because often they attract unavailable men, or men who just use them, say all of the right things, but use them and run, or just won't commit. And that comes down to things that we have experienced, because I don't know a single woman out there that has not at some point in her life been let down, been betrayed, or been hurt, whether that's from a man or a woman or family, anyone. And what happens is, when we've been hurt, when we've been let down, we go, oof, I don't know if I can rely on someone. And we just close off just that little bit. And the reason we close off is because we don't want to be hurt again. And when that happens over and over again, we go, okay, I can't rely on anyone. I need to be completely self-sufficient, which means we don't know how to ask for help. And even when people say, oh, do you need a hand? Oh, no, I'm fine. I've got this. Because again, that was another story that was sold to us through the feminist movement. We don't need anyone. And so we create this world where we have to be able to do it all. And what happens is that becomes really lonely. And when we're scared of being hurt, often we shut down our hearts. Because, you know, my background with psychology and hypnotherapy and working with emotional traumas, I cannot tell you the amount of women I have worked with that come to me thinking, oh, you're going to teach me how to live, how to override my emotions. You're going to teach me the power of my mind so that I can just go, I'm not weak anymore. I don't need to feel sad. I don't need to feel hurt. I am in control. And I always have to say, that is the opposite of what I am doing. That is the opposite, because I was you. I was you. I lived so much of my life so hurt, you know, and I've told you my story before, you know, I was poor when I grew up. I grew up with a lot of violence and abuse and assault. And my heart literally could not take it anymore. Even as a little kid, I felt like all of the anger and pain I had inside of me was going to kill me. And I don't mean that as an overstatement. I literally felt that I'm like, I cannot physically hold all of this anger. And to survive, all I did was just shut it down and create walls around me. And I'm like, no one will ever hurt me again, because I won't let them. I'm not going to be a fool. I'm not going to rely on anyone else. I don't need anyone else. And so I thought, living in my mind, perfect solution. If I can rationalize and reason and use logic to get my way out of any situation, I don't have to feel, I'm a powerhouse. I've really made it. And what I didn't realize I was doing is I was trying to be like a man, really, right? Because I didn't realize the power of my emotions. I didn't realize they had a purpose. I didn't realize they could actually help me, because up until that point, It was just too painful. I thought my emotions were hurting me. I was too weak. And so undoing that processing made me realize that, oh my gosh, this is the gift of being a woman, which is a really scary thing to realize when it feels overwhelming. But by living in my head, I was cutting myself off from the true source of my power. Because through my emotions lives my intuition, lives my inner wisdom, lives my truth, lives the source of my connection to all others, to family, to friends, and to love. And until I learn how to harness and synthesize and find harmony within that in myself, I am living a life alone. And so that is the conditioning that a lot of us are living in. When I come back to women that I work with, where they think living in their mind is powerful, that's not where relationships live. And so helping them undo the fear, undo the layers of trauma, of pain that they have been carrying, going, I can't rely on this person. No one's ever there for me. I feel invisible. I feel alone. Because when we carry those fears and those beliefs and those traumas in our hearts and in our minds and in our bodies, we're essentially going through life with our arms out in front of us, going, you can come close, but you can only come this far, right? And then you're wondering why no one can hug you, why no one will really love you, because you got to open your arms up wider. You can't hug someone like this. You're just pushing them away. And my biggest moment of humble pie, and it hurt because I spent a lot of my life wondering why love wasn't coming in. Like, I'm a catch. I'm great. I'm independent. I'm successful. I'm low maintenance. I don't need a guy. It was realizing that I was the one doing this to myself. I was the one pushing everyone away, even though deep in my heart, all I wanted was to be loved. And when we get to that place where we can safely release our fears, we are then able to actually access the seat of our power as women and the seat of our connection, because then it's so much easier to embrace love in our lives. That's what we're here to feel. That's what we're here to create. That's what we're here to expand as women. It's the experience and the embodiment and the enjoyment of love and all of the beautiful things that come with that. That's why we are the ones that carry human life. That is the ultimate embodiment of love. Whether you're physically carrying it or connecting with it or sharing it with someone else, we respond in different ways to men. It's not the same. The power is not in being like a man.
But also, I think that there's something to be said for one of my lessons was that if I'm operating from my mind space, then I'm putting out into the world what I think people want to see in me instead of allowing them to get to know who I really am. So people fall in love with what you do, they don't fall in love with who you are. And so one of my greatest lessons when, because I've been engaged twice before and I had one of my biggest breakdowns outside of 2021, the meltdown of 2021, which everyone who listens to this podcast knows really well about, was when I got out of that relationship, I realized that I have no idea who I am. So if I don't know who I am, then how am I acting? And did my ex-fiance fall in love with me or the idea of me? And I felt so lonely in my life back then. And from the outside, I looked like I had it all perfect, right? He was successful. He was a handsome guy, really charismatic and all these kinds of things. But I was so lonely. And I remember moving back home from overseas and just being like, how could I possibly have expected someone and any of his friends, because I just couldn't connect with any of the wives in, that group. How could I possibly have asked any of them to, accept me with open arms when who I was someone that did not operate from my heart space. They had no idea who I was. If I have no idea who I am, how is anyone else meant to know who I am? And so that was a massive, like, rude slap in the face awakening for me, being like, well, if you're going to put out a version of yourself in the world, that's who people are going to either like or not like. So you can't blame them for treating you the way that they do. And you can't blame people for being attracted to that, because that is who you are putting out into the world. And I think that when I hear people who are a lot on the dating apps, or, there's a movie that I really like, what's it called? Think Like a Man. Think like a man, act like a woman.
Yeah.
And it's such a great example, because you can't play life that way. And I love that they don't, play on that. And they show that, there's that women have to kind of, that doesn't really work in reality, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that we're constantly being fed, think like a man, act like a woman, like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? So, it's so frustrating. So when you come across this in your work, and obviously when people are trying to date, we've talked about the checklist so many times. And I feel like dating can be really hard at this day and age. You and I thankfully grew up in a time where things were still offline. We've seen the transition.
Oh my gosh.
And that transition has been really hard for me, even though it's been like for the last 10, 15 years. Thank God I didn't meet my husband online. But I feel like a lot of people meet significant others online. How do you guide people to go out and date now when everything is very much, you could literally be sitting at dinner with someone, go to the bathroom, and he could literally check if there's someone on his Tinder in the vicinity? Like, how do you navigate that as a woman who's in the dating scene at the moment?
It's a very different world. And I feel like, with the dating scene online, there's an illusion that there are so many fish in the sea, right? That's what we're being sold. It's like, oh, you could just keep swiping. You don't have to settle. And so we're almost aspiring to a level of perfection that is rendering us alone because it doesn't exist. And so, yes, there's a lot of people out there on the apps, but that doesn't mean there's a lot of quality out there. And so it's being really clear on what is it that you're truly desiring. Is it the man that's 6 foot tall, that has dark hair, that has a 6-figure salary, that, has his own home, et cetera, or is it someone that you can connect with on a heart level, that makes you feel whole and seen and loved, that listens to you when you've had a bad day, that acknowledges how you feel and doesn't just dismiss you, that doesn't run away when there's a conflict? Because the challenge that I find now is, because so many people are on the apps, a lot of people want it easy. And so the moment, they're in it for a good time, not a long time. So the moment it starts to get challenging or there's difficult conversations, they leave. They go, oh, it's not feeling the same anymore. So when you're dating, it's really about observing who someone is, because they'll show you with their actions. You don't have to ask. We talked about the checklist. Oh my gosh, we've had so many conversations about this, because a lot of women are now going out dating and we're meeting men where they are, right? We're trying to meet them at their heads, which means we're in our masculine energy, because that's where their head is. And so you're going in there with your checklist and you're trying to be efficient. And you're going, do you meet these standards? Do you check these boxes? Do we want the same things? What's your 5-year plan? What's your next thing? What's your next target? And there is nothing sexy or connecting about that. And so 3 things that I encourage women to do when they're going on a date, because a lot of us, we spoke about this before, we don't want to waste our time. The clock is ticking, we're in a different phase of life. We just want to get on with it. It's so to step out of that and not get caught up in this cycle of constantly churning through men, because you're not going to find a quality man when you're showing up in your masculine, interrogating him, treating it like a job interview. Because that's what it ends up being. It's like, oh, okay, I'm in the hot seat and I've got to answer all of your questions, and did I make it? A quality man will interview you. He will check to see if you meet his criteria, because when a man is serious, because if you're looking for an actual relationship, when men want something, they will make it known. He's not looking for a one-night stand. He's not looking just for a good time, just to see where things go. He knows where his life is heading. He knows if he wants to be married, if he wants to have a family, when he wants to settle down. And you will find that out through the way that he shows up, the questions that he asks, and the way he treats you. He's not just looking for a booty call. So your role, really, as a woman, you get to relax. So you're only going in, especially for the first couple of dates. You just want to know, do I even like this person? Am I going to have fun? Do I like his sense of humor? Do we connect? Do I feel good when I'm around him? Because often we try and pretzel ourselves to make us suit him. Whereas no, you just get to relax. You're seeing if he meets your needs in a fun way, right? The second thing is, again, we're not having a business meeting. There is no need to have to talk about work. He might ask you what you do, but I generally recommend keep it light and easy, because sometimes, and I used to do this, my ego gets in there. My ego is like, oh, great, this is my chance to show how successful, what a catch I am, how amazing I am. So I want to talk about, the projects I'm working on and the things that I've accomplished and where I am in the status of my business and or life or career, whatever it is. That doesn't build connection. And I've also noticed men's face change when I'm talking about work, and they go, oh, because I've seen that drop of, oh, hang on, maybe I'm not at her level, or, oh, maybe she's not going to be interested in me, and, oh, how much is she making, and do I match that, right? That's not creating connection. And that's me trying to compete with him, which again is really masculine. I'm not looking to compete with a man in a relationship. I want him to be my partner. I want us to be a team. I'm not trying to see who's better than who. Like, I can do this better. I've got to do it my way. I can prove it to you. So just keep it light, instead of focusing about work and getting caught off, which I know can be tempting, in the ego race of proving who you are and how successful you are. Gloss over it and then focus on the things that actually truly matter to you, the things that light you up, the things that you love doing and connecting with friends or hobbies. And then share something vulnerable. Because if you're looking for a relationship that's built on authentic human connection, I used to think that something that made me a catch was being chill and happy all the time. And I'm great, I'm fine, I'm self-sufficient. You're going to have no dramas with me. But really, the invitation for connection is when there's something real there. Right? If you go out with someone who's always happy, nothing seems to faze them, you're going to start to wonder if they're real or if they're just a robot. And it's our vulnerabilities that make us human and that help us connect. It's why we feel closer to someone when we've been there to support them through a tough time, or they've cried on our shoulder, we've cried on their shoulder. That's what bonds us. And I'm not saying talk about your whole life story and dump and, go through all of your traumas, but just answer with some level of emotional truth instead of having to pretend in order to keep it light and easy. So if you don't go in with your checklist and just focus on having fun. Second, we're not here to prove our worth. We're not here to talk about work. We're here to talk about something that's fun, that lights us up, because that's when we see the humanness of who we are. And 3, something vulnerable to connect and to see, because this is also a really great way to see if they can hold space for you or if they're going to run away. Or, because if they're not looking for anything serious, they're not interested in authentic connection.
That's so important. That's so important. Knowing that's the greatest filter. And you can be mysterious and interesting without being vague. and you can connect with people without trauma dumping on someone.
Like, it's not a therapy session.
No, it's definitely not a therapy session. But also, it's like you said, like you're creating a space for someone to see whether they can hold you in that space. And that says a lot about who they are as a person and how they can support you long term. It's like I said before, right? Like, I was not taught to look for someone who made me feel safe and was generous and was supportive. And these were things that they're not sexy. There's nothing sexy about that, or at least we've been told that. But it's like that conditioning that we keep talking about. The make women so confused that they're willing to support outrageous things like, our space is being completely taken over at the moment.
Oh my gosh.
And when I see people who are like who claim to be feminists to be supporting this, I'm like, do you even like being a woman? Because if you did, you would see that this is like regression for everything that we've fought for.
Oh,
and even there's things like I was recently, I love documentaries, and I love that you brought up that whole thing about birds. It's not just birds. Have you seen spiders? Like spiders that dance and glisten and glitter. It's amazing.
Wow.
The male spider is like this showman, and the female spider is this ugly brown thing. And if she doesn't like it, she attacks him and she can eat him. If she doesn't like his performance for, let's get it on tonight.
He's really putting himself out there.
She attacks him, literally. And it's like, it's peacocking. We're not peacocks. Yeah. That's not our thing. Yeah. Like if anyone has seen a female peacock, they look nothing like the male peacock. We are very plain. And we have forgotten what our role is in the ecosystem, because everywhere else, this is how it's run. And so who is out there trying to confuse us? And one of the things that I've come across in a lot of the studies that I do, and I know that you and I share a passion for all things controversial and conspiracy theory. But, looking at things like when women were sold cigarettes as torches of freedom, that was the marketing campaign. And there was this whole thing constructed where women would light up a cigarette in public, which was unheard of at the time. And they were sold to women as, this is your freedom. You can light up a cigarette. It's torches of freedom. And when you think of all the ways that they sell freedom to us, they're still doing it. It's the same marketing strategy. It's literally the same thing. So that whole liberation thing, that body positivity movement, you can be body positive at any size, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, let's talk about health here.
Oh my gosh, I was just about to say that. I'm
like, help.
Yeah.
So there's all these things that were being sold as, girlfriend, you should be proud of that. I'm like, we've got enough women in this world. We don't need to bring in more women that aren't actually women, that are actually men wanting to be women. So this whole feminist movement that I call myself an anti-feminist, because I get that it would have started with genuine, interest in creating an equal playing field for men and women. But I can't imagine that whoever founded this idea and this movement was thinking, let's act like men, and then when men want to be women, let's bring them into the sisterhood. And so it's just this thing of confuse women as much as possible, and then when you confuse women, they then act erratically, and then they confuse men, and then men no longer know where they stand in the life of women. And, it's one of the things that I really appreciate about what you said about let the man ask the questions. Let him take on his role. Let him ask you out on a date. Let him plan it. And you show up. You just ask him what I need to wear and where I need to go. How about that?
Yeah. The idea, and this happens so rarely now, a man that takes you out on a date and just tells you what time, where, even what to wear, like, get dressed up. Because often women are organizing it. And I don't know many even women that are living in their masculine energy, that are self-sufficient, that don't love it when a man leads and takes control and says, we're going here, get dressed up. We're going somewhere fancy. I'm going to take you out for the night. Because we're sick of it. We're sick of wearing that hat during the day, working, and then having to look after a guy that can't even, if you invited me out on a date, I'm expecting you to organize it. I'm not organizing my own date. But going back to what you said, which, oh my gosh, we can go down the rabbit hole of how the feminist movement even started. And ladies, it didn't start with women. It started with the man that wanted to. Anyway, it was run by men. But that's another rabbit hole. But the purpose of that is to understand, you touched on it before. How do we even know who we are when so much of our beliefs about who we are has been infiltrated by the things that we have seen and we have been told? And so much of this is about unlearning. Because, I was a big fan of the feminist movement. I wanted equality. I wanted everything to be 50-50. I don't need a man. I'm self-sufficient. This makes me powerful. Go me. How desirable am I? And it took a while for me to realize that's actually not who I am. And it felt scary admitting that to myself in this world where women weren't supposed to need men, where they didn't want to be treated like a woman. I love a man that can take care of me. I love a man that leads, that I can lean on and know that he has got me, that gives me permission and space to be in my feminine, in my gentle emotions, in my loving space, where I don't have to work like him to be lovable, where, I was out for 4 months and that has to be okay, as opposed to, oh no, I need to somehow drag myself up out of bed on my deathbed and keep going because that's what I need to do as a woman. It's about giving myself permission to be, and I feel for a lot of women because it is confusing, because if you're not all of these labels, then who are you? And what I want to let you know is that it's safer now than it's ever been. It's where, whenever there's change, often we go from one extreme to the next, and it's like the pendulum, and it needs to swing back to the middle. And I'm excited because I feel like now we're in a space where we're coming back to the middle, where we're realizing that I actually enjoy being a woman. I don't want to be like a man. And I want to claim my space and my voice and my power, not in a masculine sense, but my truth here. And there's so many more women that are now swinging back to the feminine energy, that it's not as scary to step into that. It's not as scary to say, I don't want to pay 50-50 on all the dates. I actually love it. And to admit it, right? And I actually like being taken out on a date. I really appreciate a man that pays, not because I'm stingy and I'm not capable, but because he makes me feel taken care of when he does that. And unconsciously, that makes me feel safe. It's telling me that, this guy, he's got me. He's got me. I can actually relax. I can let some of my guard down. And that feels liberating. That feels like freedom to me, because when we let go of the stories, when we let go of our traumas, when we let go of our fears, there's space for our truth to come up. And then we're building a relationship with that, which is how we tap into our wisdom, how we tap into our intuition. And it is fast. You don't need your brain. It takes a while for the brain to actually analyze and look at the facts, but your emotions will instinctively give you the answer whether you feel good or you don't. And the power is in trusting that when you've learned how to distill that information.
Oh, girl, you just hit a donkey on its tail, its head, and its, I don't know, whatever other body parts we can pin on a donkey. I just need a moment here, because even in what you just said, right, about that whole 50-50 thing, and I think that so many women think that, because it comes to, there's different traumas that can be around that, right? You could have financial trauma, like money issues in your family, that you have, you don't want people to think you're poor or something if you came from a poor upbringing, and that whole thing of, I'm not successful enough, I'm not worthy, I don't make enough money. whatever it is that you've got going on, you've got some kind of a story going on that tells you that you're not good enough, basically, and you need to prove yourself by paying half or whatever else. But one of the things I love about what you just said is that, just because he pays for dinner doesn't mean there isn't a way that you can repay him in other ways. Men love to be taken care of. That's why there's that whole thing of, they marry their mothers. It's a thing because that's what they appreciate. They want to be taken care of in that sense. And everywhere else in the animal kingdom, when we look at, males and females, the men are the ones protecting the family and the female. And then the female is the one that then takes, full protection of the children in the community. And so that brings that whole sisterhood piece in for me, because I just think that women are so disconnected from each other by design so that we can't help each other raise children. I don't know if you've seen that whole social media thing that's going on where homesteaders and people who want to homeschool and stay-at-home mums and people who, don't want to give their children shots so that they go to school. And I saw this lady on a clip. I see this girl's podcast all the time, but I don't know what her name is, but she was interviewing a woman who basically debunked the thing of daycare, right? That kids need socializing.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit. It's the mum that needs that you're doing that for yourself. You're not doing that for the kid.
Yeah.
And so she completely debunks the need for children to be socialized, especially before the age of 3.
Yeah.
So,
and they still get access to socialization. No one raises their kid in isolation in a room with no contact with the human world.
But also, even if you are homeschooling children, there are programs where you get to be involved with other homeschooled children. So it's like, it's not like you're shoving them in a dungeon underneath the house and not letting them talk to anybody. Like, that's actually ridiculous. But also, like, I think of the kids that are really well spoken have really been able to tap into the adult conversation and their parents speak to them like an actual adult instead of goo goo gaga until they're God knows what age. And so that, I think that communication piece, you can teach your children how to communicate. That doesn't make them weird from other children. So there's so many things to unpack in all the things that you just said right now.
So oh my gosh, and there were so many rabbit holes that can go down.
Look, I didn't know that the feminist movement was something that was created by a man. So I feel like I need to look into that a little bit more. But I think that we've been sold such bullshit, Yali. Like, it's such bullshit.
Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole. And this is a scary thing. Sometimes I go, I wish I didn't know so much because I kind of loved living in ignorant bliss. But when you go down the rabbit hole, especially as a woman, and you realize how manipulated you have been and how many lies you have been told, it is infuriating.
Oh, yeah.
Which supercharges me to go, nah, we are the ones that get to write our own stories. I will no longer be someone else's rabbit that is just here for them to experiment on. I'm not okay with that. So I want to reclaim my sovereign right and be who I am authentically so I can live the life that I desire, not what I'm being sold. And I want more women to have access to that, because that is truly empowering, not to be a puppet of someone else's agenda.
Do you find that women that come to you know what makes them happy? I feel like women have no idea. I didn't ask myself that, Yali. I had no idea what that was. I'm like, what do you mean I get to decide what makes me happy? So I shouldn't be told? Like, and I realized that at 37, 2021, my little stray jacket being pulled out of it, like, that's what it should have happened. Take away all sharp objects. I had the biggest moment of realization that year because, the mandates that were going on in Melbourne. I lost family members. I lost friends. I went through a breakup. I had to sell a house. I realized in that moment I've lived my life for everybody else so that they can be proud of me. And I was just like, what does it mean for me to be a woman? What's a woman? What am I most proud of? What makes me happy? I'd never asked myself these questions, and I wish I had someone older and wiser than me to tell me your life is your creation. You get to choose who you are. You get to choose who you want to be. You get to choose what makes you happy. And you need to discover that for yourself. Because I would have been on this self-development path way earlier had it not been for me hearing the sound of, I know this will probably sounds, no, it probably wouldn't sound strange. All my listeners are all down the woo-woo rabbit holes. In in my first engagement. It would have been around 2012, 2013, when I remember walking home. It was a blizzard. I was living in Montreal at the time. I didn't want to go home. I had started staying back late at work because I didn't want to go home. I was really unhappy in my relationship at the time. And I remember sitting on the curbside and I just burst out into tears. And it was just so quiet suddenly, Ali. And it's snowing everywhere. There's like blizzards, no one's around. But there I am, this Aussie girl, idiot, walking down through the blizzard because I didn't want to go home, and totally not safe, by the way. And I just sat down and I just sobbed. And I remember putting my hand on my tummy and I said to my stomach, I wasn't pregnant, by the way. This was just so intuitive. I'm not going to let my daughter settle for a life like I did. And everything went silent. And I heard a voice. And that voice said to me, you haven't accepted this life yet. And you don't need to. I went home, and within days, I ended my engagement. And I was like planning on moving back home, but I was like, I have another 2 years on my visa. It had just come through. So I was just like, I may as well stay for a little bit longer and, have a good time, whatever else. I ended up staying another 2 years. But I just remember in that moment, and I didn't know that that was my intuition, and I didn't know that that was my, ancestors coming through, the spirit realm speaking to me, my higher self, everyone trying to slap me in the face because I was making all these mistakes. And it was in that moment where I realized, oh my God, I have an inner voice. I do have a guide. I might not have women in my life, but I do actually have a guide. And that's when I started listening to my intuition. And I don't think you can do that until you understand that your heart, that resonating, vibrating field that you have around your heart is either dim or it's radiant. And so the more we tap into that, the more we're able to tap into our intuition, and the more we're able to know straight away, like you said, right? It takes your mind a little while to recognize that something's off because your mind's trying to convince you that it's not. But your heart knows. Your intuition knows. Your body knows. I remember dating this guy years ago. Put everything I wanted on a piece of paper, right? I was like, this guy's perfect. He's everything that I want. I could not talk near him. I would shake when I would talk. I felt really uncomfortable. He would just say things and I was like, but he's everything that I want on a piece of paper. Could not be myself around this person. And so, but my brain was trying to rationalize it and being like, well, no, he's everything that everything that you've been looking for. Little did I know, everything I was looking for is my now husband. Do you know what I mean? So there are so many things about what you just said that was just like ding, 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 all these things going off in my head. But
well, can I just add to that?
Yeah.
And because a lot of us rely on our minds to make sense of things, evolutionarily speaking, that was the last thing to develop.
Isn't that amazing?
So there's 3 different parts, right? We've got the reptilian brain, the limbic system, and we've got the neocortex. And so the first thing that was created was our nervous system, right? To make sure that our organs are working, our lungs are breathing, our heart is beating, that everything is going on perfectly. Then it was the emotional layer, right? Because if you're in the jungle and you hear a rustling, you just know to run. You go. You don't sit there analyzing, going, oh, well, I can't see anything.
I'm probably just paranoid.
Yeah, I'm just making something up. Let me continue until I can gather more information. No, you run because your emotions are designed to save you, get you out of that situation. And then the neocortex came, which is what we now consider to be the most evolved parts of us, where we can analyze and we can rationalize. And unless all 3 are working in balance, we are undoing what we are designed to do. So the thing I always say is, if you do not question how your lungs are breathing and how your heart is beating, going, oh my gosh, have I remembered to breathe today? Like, are my lungs working? Is my heart beating? You don't tell it how to do it. It works. If we don't question our breathing, then we shouldn't be questioning our emotions, because that is hardwired long before the brain as we know it today ever existed. The only piece that we're missing is the relationship with it. Because when we've been out of touch for so long, often we're scared, not because of the emotion of itself, but because of the build-up of emotion. Because there's no such thing as a bad emotion. We need to feel angry sometimes. It's not bad. We need to feel angry because often that's telling us a boundary has been crossed. I'm not getting treated the way that I deserve, and we need to take action. So if we didn't feel angry, we wouldn't speak up for ourselves. We wouldn't have boundaries in place. And it's good to feel sad, not because the emotion feels good, but because it shows us that we felt something. We wouldn't trust somebody who never ever felt sad. We think there'd be something wrong with them if they were always happy, even in the face of adversity. So all of those emotions are important because through that, we also find that inner voice. We find our wisdom. We find our higher self. We find our intuition. And oh my gosh, women have this in a way that men just do not. I've seen interviews with incredibly successful men, and they will go home after business meetings or interviews and they will ask their wife, "What do you think?" And they will go with her intuition. And they go, whenever I go against her intuition, it ends up being a bad business decision because she just knows something. She can pick it up. And how many times have you been in a situation where you go, this person sounds lovely, but I don't know, there's just something about them just doesn't feel right. And every time we override it and try to rationalize that we're being silly, it takes us down the wrong path. And so now I just learned to trust myself and go, no, there's a situation that doesn't feel good. I'm not going to stay in that situation. I move on.
Two things. I have spent 17 years doing what I do now. I work in executive management and have for a very long time. And I've worked alongside mostly men because I chose to, because they're less emotional and less competitive, interestingly. I now work with the most amazing woman and she's incredible. However, 90% of the executives that I've worked alongside have asked me to sit in on interviews. They've asked me to sit in on business meetings. They've asked me to sit in on, when they need to performance manage somebody. They've asked me to sit in and then we unpack it afterwards. Always. And I just thought it was because I'm really great at my job. And I am, right? I'm really great at my job. I've been doing it a long time. But the fact that I'm a woman means that I have an ability to see a detail that they don't. And that's what made me really good at my job because I was really good at picking out that detail. The other thing that I wanted to mention is until this moment, while I knew this to be true, it never really dawned on me. If anything happens to your brain and you're brain dead, you can continue to exist and live as a vegetable, but your whole bodily system keeps running. If anything happens to your heart, you're dead. Like, let that sink in, everybody who's trying to operate from a place that's in the gray matter between your ears, because you cannot live a life without your heart. You cannot exist, but you can exist without your brain. So what does that say in terms of, human existence? And yet here we are trying to do everything that we can to think logically and I mean, even my mum has said, make decisions from here, not from here, because this gets you into trouble. That's what I was raised with.
We've heard that a lot. I've heard that a lot too. And, I think moving forward, it's also finding that balance between the two because there's still a place for our minds.
Oh, 100%.
It's amazing because, also sometimes we trauma bond when we haven't dealt with our stuff. And so our heart is so connected to this person, but they are bad for us. So sometimes we need our mind to get us out of that situation and go, come on, you deserve better. We need to move on. We need to fix this. But once you've got that harmony, these can be integrated in such a really beautiful way. And I love, love, love how powerful that imagery is. You cannot live without your heart. So how incredible and potent is that for our survival? You can't live life without it. It's essentially killing yourself.
You are weeks away from being a mama bear.
I know, it's not wild.
You don't know what bebe is.
Mm-mm. Boy or girl?
So when you think of the wisdom that you wish to impart on your future child, what is the thing that you are most proud of that you want them to know?
There's probably 3 things that come to mind. You probably only want one.
No,
But
hit
they're
me.
all
What are the 3
connected.
things?
One, it's that they don't have to do anything to deserve my love. That they are inherently worthy, because I wish I knew that as a little girl, that I was lovable just as I am. That I didn't have to perform, that I didn't have to earn it, that I didn't have to prove it for someone to look at me, to take care of me, to be there for me. So I want this child to know that they are worthy in and of themselves. And from that, I want them to have that internal validation, to not seek it outside of themselves, to know that, oh, I did a good job, or this painting is great because I'm happy with it, not because someone else approved of that or told me I did a good job. So from that inherent space of self-worth comes an internal validation and an understanding to then also know that there's no such thing as a bad emotion. I want them to know that all emotions are safe and there is a space for all of it, and know how to process and move through it and communicate it so that we can resolve it, because I don't want them carrying a build up because they were told that when they were angry, they were bad little kids and that we withdrew love from them. It's like, you're allowed to be angry, and here's how we can regulate that. And here's how we can move through it. Now, obviously, it's going to be a bit harder with a newborn baby, but they're the 3 things, knowing that they're inherently worthy, being able to find validation within themselves, and feeling safe in their emotions, however big or small. It's all within the realm of acceptance.
Such key things, right? And I mean, look, you and your partner have obviously done a lot of self-development work. You guys are both very aware of your own BS.
Yeah.
Had that conversation with Maddie.
For better or worse.
But children learn by watching you.
Yeah.
It's not by what you tell them. It's how you behave. And so one of the things that I know about you and your partner will be that your kid is going to know how to self-regulate. Your caramello bebe is going to know how to communicate emotions because you guys do that.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was even thinking of, when I was going through the process of being like, okay, yeah, I want to be a mum. And I went and did, my Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and all the things, the fertility stuff. One of the things that really came forward for me was it's so important for you to do the work before you bring a baby through that portal. And it's so evident that you've done that and you will continue to do that because
it doesn't end.
The two of you know that. So people
Yeah.
think it's a destination, Yali. And I'm like,
Mm-mm.
it's not, guys. This is, you literally spend your lifetime unraveling not only what you have been, sold and propagandized and, manipulated into believing early on. You spend the rest of your life undoing that. And then you spend the rest of your life undoing the things in your past life, which is what I really believe. And I don't know what you
Yeah.
believe, but for me, it's like there are things that we just don't know and we don't know how to explain because we've shut off ourselves from our higher source. But to bring a baby through that portal, that's huge. And if there's trauma in that portal, that baby's coming out with your trauma, girlfriend.
Oh my
So,
gosh. And babies are designed to trigger you because they're the invitation for you to do the healing. And what people don't realize is they think that when we've done the work, that we also then attract a partner that means life is going to be easy.
nah.
Here's the thing. A good relationship will trigger you not just a kid. A good relationship will trigger you because
Yep.
you've both come together, you feel safe together, and that allows the healing to happen. Because we can, I love Shrek. I don't know if you've ever watched Shrek, but I love the phrase of, ogres are like onions. We are like
Amen, sister.
onions. We
Yeah.
are like onions, which means we just go into deeper and deeper layers. And we only access those deeper layers when we're ready. So sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, I've done all this work for over a decade and I'm still going. And sometimes you experience an issue that you think, oh, I thought I already dealt with this or healed this. How is this coming up again? And it's, oh, I'm just accessing a deeper layer.
Yeah.
Because I've done enough of the healing that now I'm ready for this deeper layer. So relationships can trigger you because they're the invitation for a deeper layer of healing. And kids will trigger you because they're the mirror of the parts of you that you haven't yet been ready to look at.
Your partner as well, though. Like my husband is a reflection. Sometimes I see things in myself that make me feel really shit because I was like, he's really showing me where I still have work to do.
Oh, yeah.
And at first I was just like, oh my God, like, what does this mean? And I'm like, no, you choose exactly who you are meant to in life because you have lessons that you have chosen to learn when your soul decided to take on this human experience. Your soul said, these are the things that I want to achieve. And then you come out of the portal, you forget all of the things, and then you have to.
Why did I sign up to this? Oh.
And you spend the rest of your life going, why did I choose my family? Why did I choose my kids? Why did I choose? So, but it really is what you've just said. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to look at your own stuff. It's an invitation to peel your onion. And I, when I started doing the self-development work, I think we've talked about, I'm a senior graduate of the Landmark Forum. And I remember going through the forum the first weekend and I was just like, this is what it feels like to cut an onion, the onion of my life. Yeah. Every layer burns. The closer you get to the center, the more you cry. So
I love
you're
that.
willing to accept that you're going to get triggered the shit out of when you become more aware, the more triggered you're going to become because you are then opening yourself up to learn all of those things about yourself. And you're choosing. One of my favorite things that they say in that curriculum is you're either going to be in the grandstands watching people play or you're going to be on the court. Who do you want to be? And I'm like, I want to be on the court. Being on the court means that if you think of, the tennis is on right now, being on the court means that you're going to fight and compete and people are going to say shit about you and you're going to fall. You're going to fall so many times, but success depends on how many times you get up. And I think of, what's his name? Novak Djokovic.
Oh my God.
What happened to him a few years ago and he's still number one? You know what I mean? Yeah. He's still a legend. He's still fighting and he proved everybody wrong.
Mm-hmm. And he trusted himself.
Amen. Yeah.
Right? He listened to his own instincts and intuition and went, I'm not doing it like everyone else. I get to choose for myself, which is how we claim our power.
And he was not willing to move. Like that was like digging his feet in because he knows who he is. Yeah. He knows the value he brings. And he knows that tennis at this moment in time doesn't exist without him because he's one of the best. It's like the days of Sampras and Agassi. Those days. Oh my gosh. Not that I'm big on tennis, but those names because they were the best. It's the Muhammad Ali of boxing. Yeah. It's the what's his name? The one that I really can't stand. The money guy, money man. What did he call himself? I don't remember his name. This is how much I dislike him because his attitude he's just so cocky. I can't stand him, but he's a good boxer, right? I think he's retired now. But Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather, I really hate him. I say hate. Don't know the guy. I don't like who he puts out into the world. Not about it, but I love what's his name? Mike Tyson. I love him. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But, these are the greats of their time, whether you watch boxing, whether you watch UFC, whether you watch tennis, whether you watch any of these sports, you know their names because they know who they are, they know what they bring, and there is just no BS when it comes to that. No one can shake them down.
There's an energy around them too, right? When you are that certain in yourself and hold that energy powerfully, you pay attention. They don't even need to say anything. They walk into a room and you're magnetized.
I was about to say I feel really shit that I didn't mention a woman, but the woman that I would say does that for me. People may be surprised at this because it's not going to be Michelle Obama, but it's
Oh.
Melania Trump.
Oh.
Can we talk about how in her thing she is?
Oh, yeah.
Like, that woman holds a power. She is
Yeah.
happy to be underestimated.
Yeah.
She is just like, say whatever you want about me because I know who I am.
She's unshakable.
Mm-hmm.
She's unshakable. And I feel like there's another rabbit hole that we're going to go down with that one.
Next episode, we're going to get on a conspiracy theory episode.
Oh my God. That was so, I've learned so much. But I love that you brought her up because, you know, when you only get your information from mainstream media, and again, this is part of who are we really versus what are we being told to think, believe, and embody? Oh, there is a power in a woman who can show up no matter the circumstance and hold her own, not through the masculine where she has to speak up and be aggressive and brute force. She just is. And that is palpable.
Which is a complete contrast to Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, all of the women that were really loud and proud during that time. And where are they now?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I used to really admire Oprah Winfrey until I got to know more about her.
Yeah, no,
But
me
again,
too.
that's another
I think
rabbit
we've gone
hole.
down the rabbit hole. It's what's
It's deep and it's
is,
dark, my friends, and it's damp.
But it's scary because you realize how little of who you were was shaped by you and was infiltrated by everything else. But before we go further down this topic, I do really want to touch on two things from what you said around the onions and the layers and the work that we have to do. Because sometimes that can feel scary, right? Because people think, oh gosh, I've been doing this for so long. Aren't I on the other side already? And it's, oh no, we're going deeper. On some level, it does get easier because you move through it faster because you've built that resilience. You have that knowledge in yourself now and you're not scared because it's our fear that suppresses, which keeps us in the trap of the emotion, and then it snowballs. So you process things faster. But one thing that really helps me be ready to face it every time something comes up for me is the realization that if I don't learn this now, this lesson is going to keep repeating itself over and over and over again until I am forced to actually look at it. And so if I'm in a space where I'm like, I really don't want to look at this, I go, do I want to keep repeating this? No. Doing this once is enough. I will. So now my attitude is I will never go through this again. So whatever this brings, I'm going to show up and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to open myself up to it because I want this cycle to end. I will never go through this again. I will learn the lessons. So if it's being upset with someone because they're not showing up for you in the way that you want, to getting really frustrated and going, I'm not asking for much, like, why can't you cook me a meal when I come over? Why do I have to sit there and go, is something happening? Or I don't, do I need to feed myself? And I don't want to speak up and I don't want to be rude. It's instead of expecting someone to read my mind, I go, oh, well, my lesson is I need to speak. I need to share, and not from a place where I'm angry, but from vulnerability. Oh, which is still scary for me sometimes, but I'm learning, right? And so then I'll have a conversation and go, oh, I just feel a little bit sad because, I love spending time with you. And when this doesn't happen, I feel like I'm not special and I don't feel important. And this is what I would need to feel like I matter. And that, I like a man who puts in effort for me. And I like a man who wants to take care of me. Or, I really love food and I love being taken care of in that way because that helps me feel special. And that's not I can't believe you didn't do this. Oh my gosh, I deserve so much better. This is so piss poor. Didn't anyone teach you how to host? Right?
I tell
Because
you the things
that's
that go through my mind that you're talking about next to it. But it's like you said, the more work that you do around this, the faster you get through your own crap.
oh
Because
yeah.
I pick myself up and I say, hey, 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 not today. Thank you for your input.
Mm.
Grey matter between my ears, but not today.
Yeah.
And so I can move through that. Whereas it used to take me days,
Yeah.
sometimes weeks to move through an emotion where I felt unworthy or unimportant to someone. And now I'm like, no, this is my own stuff
Yeah.
projecting. And so I love that you just said that because it's so important. When people are dating, especially, it's like that thing where you were saying it's so easy to go find someone else. And, you know, as soon as you come up across a challenge, you're like, well, I don't need this. And you're out the
Yeah.
door. But what is that
Yeah.
teaching you about yourself? What is that teaching the other person about who you are, how quickly you run, and how you can't face those things?
Yeah.
So,
And this is why
so
there are
many
no good
onion
men out
peelings.
there, because if we're not facing it, we're going to constantly get the next challenge and no one is ever going to meet our needs.
Yeah.
Part of it is sharing. And when I said, a good relationship will trigger you and it will challenge you to find, that strength and that courage and that willingness to look deeper, a good relationship will also have peace. Because it shouldn't be challenge after challenge after challenge. It has it there should be a greater balance of fun and peace than there are problems. Because if all you're dealing with is problems, that's not necessarily the healthiest relationship. It's an opportunity to learn a lot, but it's not necessarily the relationship that has harmony. And so the reason I want to bring up peace is because if you are used to a life of chaos, it is really easy for people to confuse peace with boredom. Okay? Because
Like, yes, this is resonating. Keep talking.
there's no emotional highs. You're not
Yeah.
running on adrenaline. Because here's the thing, when there aren't as many crazy problems and you have
Mm,
two healthy people, you are not going to have extremes. You're
yeah.
not going to have the screaming matches where it becomes really volatile and you're throwing things around and you're yelling at each other, because then the makeup sex can be amazing. Because when you go from one extreme to the next, the surges are
Oh, that's
so
addictive.
great. It is. It's like a drug, which is why even though you want the healthy relationship, you're chasing the wrong relationship one after the other because you're chasing the high. Okay? And that can be self-destructive. So when you start the healing journey, it's also about recalibrating what you're looking for. Because instead of looking for that extreme roller coaster ride, which can be fun for a moment, but imagine living on that. You're going to be throwing up and exhausted pretty quickly and asking for it to stop.
Mm. But you'd also become really accustomed to that, right? It becomes your normal. And so when you do find something that isn't chaotic, you're like,
Yeah.
this is uncomfortable. This doesn't
Yes.
feel right.
Yes. Yes. And that's because of the addiction. That's not because of your truth. Because we all have an innate space of peace within us that already exists. It's not something that you lost. It's just something that you haven't necessarily found your way back to because there were all of these other layers around it. And so that can be really difficult for some people to discern. It's, because we say things like, something's just not feeling right. Or there's just something missing. And we can't always articulate what that is. Or we compare, because that's what we do. We're human. So we go, there's a great relationship. They're a good person. I feel good with them. I really care about them. But I don't have that intensity of love and passion and heat that maybe I used to have with someone else. And before you dismiss it, I invite you to ask yourself, was that other relationship healthy? Or was it an intense roller coaster of chaos? Because when you have stability, the highs of chaos aren't ever going to be as high, which means if you haven't gone up to this height of chaos, you're not going to get to this height of intense love. It's going to be grounded. That doesn't mean that you don't feel it in beautiful and overwhelming ways, but it is different. And that doesn't mean you're setting yourself up for boring relationships where nothing happens and there's no fun. Because the way I look at it is peace is my springboard for fun. It's when I have peace that I can create adventure. It's when I have peace that we can have fun date nights and do fun activities and create play together. I can't create fun and play when I am in disarray. I am depleted, I am exhausted, and I can't emotionally get there. But peace is the springboard for fun, for play, for adventure. And that's where you rewrite the story.
I think that's such a big part of also being a woman and what we're good at. And so I'd love to know what you love about being a woman, Yali.
We've touched on this before, and I feel like it's so ridiculous. And I'm always loath that I even have to preface it this way, because we're in a day and age where things have to be explained. What I love about being a woman is that I am a woman, not one that had to conform my body or fight to be considered and viewed in this way. And I'm not, everyone has the right to be who they are, to identify as they are, but I am so unbelievably sick of having, in the name of inclusivity, have my identity stripped away from me. Because I'm sorry, if you have not been born as a biological woman, you will never know what it is to menstruate, what it is to have period cramps, what it is to be pregnant and nauseous and go through all of these other things, but also to have the full energetic fullness of who we are, because we are the seat of some deep inner wisdom, some incredible intuition, and the connectedness that we have with our emotions is what builds communities. That is our power. That is why we can have, that's what we create families, whether it's, blood families or friend families. We create that world and we feel and we love and we are fierce and we are powerful in that. And I worry that we live in a society where we are told everything is the same, where you can transition and be a woman because you are being sold a lie. Because if you are having surgery to change your body, you will never experience what it is to have an orgasm like a woman, ever. You are losing sensations that are so powerful. And I feel like that's sad, because if you're not aware of the changes that are happening down that road, you can feel more cut off than you were beforehand. And, not many people are talking about the rates of suicide that are happening post transitions. Now, again, I don't want to go all the way down into that rabbit hole, but for me, honestly, it's that I am a woman and I have, sometimes it can be overwhelming, it's frustrating. Why can't I be like a man? But it is all a gift. And so I love that. I love that I'm a woman and that I get to feel all the highs and lows and challenges and beauty that comes with it.
Oh, that's a topic that's so close to my heart. Look, there's a girl by the name of Chloe Cole who is a detransitioner that's talking out about this a lot, because one of the things that she said is that she didn't have anyone to tell her, hey, you know what, maybe you're just going through some things. And they just fast tracked her through a system. And she just wished she had someone to say, hey, maybe you're just feeling discomfort in your body because that's what being a teenager is.
Yeah. And it's
Like,
a
we've
rite
got
of
so many hormones.
passage.
100%. If you can get through that teenage year, right, they're really
Yeah.
hard years. I used to wish
Oh
I
my
was a boy.
gosh.
100%. But that didn't mean that I wanted to be a guy. It
Yes.
just meant that I felt out of place in my life and I didn't know how to feel, part of that female community, because I grew up with female trauma, right?
Yes.
And so if you don't recognize that for yourself, and if you don't know what a woman is, you really have to ask yourself, right? If you want to be different from anything that you are now, is it that you don't feel like you fit in? Did you not succeed as the sex that you are, and now you feel like you can be a woman and succeed, because there are a lot of boys and a lot of men who are taking medals, trophies, accolades, awards, and titles away from females. And
Yeah.
if it makes you feel better about who you are to do that, then you've got to really ask yourself, is it because you're not a female, or is it just that you don't feel good enough in the body that you are, in the reality that you live in? And maybe that's where you need to start.
Yeah.
And I love that you call that out, because that is so controversial, Yali. People don't want to talk about it. No one wants to go near it because I don't want to be cancelled. I am not afraid of being cancelled. So thank you for bringing that up.
Safe space.
So it's like,
but it's ridiculous that I even have to
yeah,
qualify that, because just a few years ago, it was so obvious what the definition of a woman was.
yeah.
And as you know, I'm pregnant, I'm going through this journey. I don't want to be called a birthing person.
Oh, stop it. I can't even
I'm a
deal with that.
mum.
You're a mum.
I was going to the Royal Women's Hospital and I have to tell them what my pronouns are.
Oh, it's so frustrating, isn't
And
it?
I'm a woman. I'm a woman. I've heard this story of, if there's a guy that goes to the doctor or calls emergency, says, I'm about to give birth, are you actually going to check? Or are you going to go, and physiologically that's impossible, so obviously you're not. We can't be treated the same way. But anyway.
No. That's like the biggest rabbit hole, and we could go on forever. I love talking to you. I admire so much what you're doing in the world. Please tell the listeners where they can find you and how they can work with you. I know you're probably going to be taking some time off because you're going to become Mama Better Caramello Baby. So, how can they work with you and when, probably?
Amazing. So I am taking some pause because this baby's coming out in a number of weeks. But you can find me on social media. I've also got some articles coming out each month through this year through Brains magazine. So I'm touching on a number of different topics to help women keep them supported and keep going. And I'm going to be working on some meditations and hypnosis recordings to help women. So keep an eye out, and you'll find out all about it through my social media until I'm back online.
Amazing. And if you are interested in connecting with Yali, I will include in the episode description and across socials links and ways you can do that. So if you haven't already, head on over to Spotify and Instagram and follow the Skin I'm In podcast to be the first to know when new episodes drop, Yali. I don't have to say it, but I will. It's been amazing.
Oh, thank you. We could talk forever. Thank you so much for having me on.
You'll totally be back, because I want to put on our tinfoil hats and dig deep into the crap that women are being fed. So until next time, guys, thanks, Yali.
Thank you. Bye.
How magnetic is Yali's energy? Her approach to life and her work gives me hope that someone out there is helping other women overcome the narrative we've been conditioned to believe and live our lives in a way that completely erases us from it. I wish I had a woman like Yali in my life 15 years ago. Granted, I may not have become the woman I am today and learned lessons I clearly needed to learn to get here, but wow. Can you imagine if we all came together to elevate each other's onion peeling, to collaborate instead of compete, to learn about the history of things like the feminist movement, which Yali told me offline was developed by the Rockefellers to send women into the workforce so that they can then tax 100% of the working population, not just the 50%, because the 50% were men, right? And so now they've taken women out of the home, put them into the workforce. That's doubled their money. Talk about evil genius. Like, we talk about evil genius on this episode on this podcast all the time, and that is some serious evil genius. I'm telling you guys, this world we live in is by design, and it's destructive to the very nature of who we are as women. And here we are, standing by, watching women be erased from womanhood and all the gifts we have that make us so special, so magical. I laugh now saying that, because in an earlier episode, I said I hate how women call themselves magic. I was like, what is this magic? We're so magic. I didn't understand it then, but now I do. Now I understand that magic is something that exists but cannot be explained. It's otherworldly, just like us women. Women are otherworldly. We have a portal that creates life and brings souls into existence for Christ's sake. And the systems that have been put into place that have manipulated us to believe that we are less than, that our bodies are commodities that are profitable, that liberation is allowing someone to penetrate you and then just like walk away, but their energy stays with you, which is then a destructive pattern within yourself. You don't know it. I'm telling you guys, I know so many women that don't realize what they're doing to themselves, but it's so destructive for us, for our energy. And for as long as they keep us in this state of lack, they'll continue to profit of our insecurities. Do you realize how amazing you all are? Do you realize the power you have within yourself as the woman that you are today, exactly who you are? No filter, no pretending, just being the real you. Do you know how special that is? Do you know how unique that is? I think many of us are starting to wake up. I really do. The more I have conversations on the podcast, the more I have conversations in my real life, there just seems to be more women that are waking up to this reality. And, I see more women are choosing to homeschool and homestead. And there is an army of haters going after these women who have embodied true feminine energy and know their place in their ecosystem. And the men in their lives, well, they're also in their masculine, doing what they are good at, protecting, providing, and holding a space for the women in their life to thrive and develop their unique gifts. I know some feminist is going to hate this episode and I'm probably going to cop some slack over this, but whatever. I am at a place where, like Yali, I am no longer staying silent to what is happening to women. I will never allow my daughter or my son, my future children, to be indoctrinated by this system. And I want them to know, just like I want you to know, that you are worthy exactly the way that you are. That you will find someone amazing in your life who's going to love you. That you don't have to settle for mediocre just so that you're not alone. But the most important part of that is doing the self-development work. And that is a lifelong commitment to loving on yourself so fiercely. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be comfortable, but it sure as hell is worth it. So do something today that's going to make you a better person tomorrow. With gratitude and grace, have a wonderful day.